Hello everyone, this is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Swallow the Stars. This will be Part 17, Chapter 17, entitled Corollary. Hitoshi has never been so emotionally exhausted in his life. Physically too, since he's still got a headache from whatever the fuck had smashed into his head, and his wrists and shoulders are throbbing and stiff from being tied behind him for so long. And he's cold for some inexplicable reason, but it's the emotions that are really weighing him down. He could fall asleep right now easily, but Izuku hasn't moved in a few minutes, and someone has to stay awake. Hitoshi doesn't even mind. He's taken his newly self-appointed position as Izuku's protector very seriously, and he doesn't think there's a single power in the world that could make him stop. Something shifts against his hands, and he looks down to find Izuku's thumb slowly rubbing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, over Hitoshi's knuckles. "Thought you were asleep," Hitoshi says, quiet, just barely above a whisper. Izuku hums like he might have been, like he still might be partially unconscious. "Making sure you're still here," he murmurs, breath reassuringly warm against Hitoshi's neck. His heart stops, starts again, and clenches tight in his chest. "I'm not going anywhere. It's a promise. Not now, not ever." Hitoshi would say that only an eldritch horror of seismic proportions would be able to pull him away, but, well, he saw the thing that ripped out of Izuku's skin. It was horrifying, in a word, beautiful in another, grotesque and bloody and far, far too big for the room that they had been in. But while the man who kidnapped them had had his life squeezed out of him, Hitoshi had been shielded from the spray of blood by one of the thing's hands, and it had looked at Hitoshi, though he can't say how he knows that. He hadn't seen any eyes, could barely comprehend appendages. When they were against its body, it was a void, flickering around the edges like fire or vapor off of dry ice. But it had looked at him, and Hitoshi had felt safe. He's just trying to repay the favor. "Your fingers are still cold," Izuku says, voice still muffled but more cognizant. "So are yours." Hitoshi squeezes his hands around Izuku's. "I don't mind, though." Izuku goes back to rubbing over Hitoshi's knuckles, slow, repetitive movements that make him drift just a little, just enough to almost miss Izuku's next words. "Sorry for ruining your birthday." Oh, right. That had been today. The party, the gifts, Izuku's haircut. He remembers Maki talking about a tattoo, remembers catching sight of it on their walk to the train station, and he connects those memories to what their kidnapper had called Izuku. 15. Fuck that. Hitoshi snorts, a stress-filled laugh bubbling its way to the surface. "It was the best birthday ever," he says, and mostly means it. He can feel Izuku frown into his neck, and that just makes him laugh again. "Okay," he concedes. "Maybe not the best, but I did get a really great present from my best friend, so that makes up for everything else." He squeezes Izuku's hands again. "And don't apologize. None of this mess is your fault." Izuku just hums, but it doesn't sound like disbelief, so Hitoshi counts it as a win. Time moves slowly around them. Hours could pass, but likely it's only a handful of minutes. Police officers give them a wide berth, as do the paramedics, though that pushy one is still hovering, keeping them in her line of sight. To be fair, it had only been her continued glaring that made Hitoshi remember the juices she had given them, that made him put straws in both of them for Izuku and himself to drink. Eventually, something breaks the monotony. "Izuku!" Two voices shout the name, one right after the other, calling out as if searching, and then, "Shinso!" Hitoshi looks up, lifting his head to sweep the space around them. It's difficult to see the details in the darkness, especially when it's lit only by bright, rotating red and blue, but he can just make out two figures at the edge of the police cars, just now moving away from the parked ambulance. "Your dads are here," he says. "Behind you, 8 o'clock. Izuku raises his head, unsteadily, blinking sleep out of his eyes as he turns and squints through the flashing lights. But he smiles when he spots the approaching figures. It's obvious when the two pro-heroes see them, too, because they take off running toward them, hands clasped together between them. And Hitoshi knows, with every fiber of his being, he knows that neither Aizawa-san nor Hisashi-san are going to hurt them. Either of them. But when he feels Izuku stiffen up, barely perceptible, Hitoshi does what he's been doing all night. He wraps his arms around Izuku's shoulders and waist, and he glares. Aizawa-san pulls up first, blocking Hisashi-san with his arm. Hitoshi can see their concern, their melting panic, but that doesn't matter to him right now. He's not here to be nice to his seniors, no matter how much he likes and respects them. He's here to protect Izuku. Hitoshi, Izuku murmurs, tension melting out of him now that the speed of his dad's approach has decreased. Thank you. It's okay. Gradually, carefully, Hitoshi relaxes his posture, arms loosening around Izuku's back, but not letting go. He nods at Aizawa-san and Hizashi-san, and apparently that's all they were waiting for, because in the next moment, they're both kneeling on the ground on either side of Hitoshi and Izuku. And then arms wrap around him, both him and Izuku, and he just breaks. He'd been expecting Aizawa-san to pull Izuku into his lap. He'd expected to be replaced as Izuku's protector. The moment that his dad showed up, he hadn't been at all prepared to be included in the adults' protection, in their care, in their affection. Tears well in his eyes before he notices, before he can stop, and his chest caves in a sob that had been brewing since he regained consciousness. He cries, and Izuku cries with him. He thinks Hizashi-san is crying too. Every piece of fear and pain and shock that he's been holding in for Izuku's sake swells up and crashes out of him, and it hurts. But it's such a fucking relief. Because it means he's safe. It means he doesn't have to be the only brave one now. When everyone's tears stop, Hitoshi practically collapses into Hizashi-san's chest. There's a hand rubbing his back, soothing and warm, and he wants to sleep, but something is nagging at the back of his mind. He's missing something, needs to do something, but he can't think of what it is right now. I had Tsukuji call your mother, Aizawa-san says, and oh right, that. But you should call her yourself when we get back to the car. Hitoshi just nods and chooses not to mention how strained Aizawa-san's voice sounds, constricted and raw like he'd been crying with them too. The four of them stand up together, Izuku leaning into Aizawa-san's side, and Hitoshi leaning against Hizashi-san. He still has one hand linked with Izuku's, though, and Izuku doesn't seem keen on letting go either. They're forced to stop at the ambulance, and the stern paramedic shines a light in their eyes and does a cursory once-over for injuries before taking back the shock blankets and telling them to go home and sleep. That's exactly what Hitoshi wants to do, but he takes Aizawa-san's phone when it's offered to him once they're finally in the car, and he quickly calls his mom. She picks up before the first ring has even finished. Aizawa-san, what? Mom. Hitoshi cuts her off, wincing at the strain in his voice, tears evident, even though they'd been dry on his cheeks for a while now. There's a gasp on the other end of the call, and he can so clearly picture her, covering her mouth, eyes brimming with relieved tears. Hitoshi! Baby, where are you? Are you safe? Are you okay? Guilt claws at Hitoshi's chest and up his throat. Tasting bitter behind his teeth, he should have thought to call sooner, borrowed a phone from a police officer or one of the paramedics, but he hadn't. I'm in the car with Aizawa-san and Hizashi-san. We're on our way to Aizawa-san's apartment. He sees Aizawa-san nod from the front seat. Yeah, Aizawa-san's apartment. I'm okay, Mom. She's quite obviously crying now. She's probably cried a lot tonight. It makes the guilt worse. Okay, baby, I'll come pick you up and... No, he says, sharp and final and wincing. He tries to calm his voice down when he speaks again. Mom, no, I can't. I'm sorry, and I love you. I want to see you too, but I can't leave him yet. His eyes move over to Izuku in the seat beside him. He's fast asleep, breath steady, one hand curled loosely in his lap with the other still holding tight to Hitoshi's hand. I can't leave him right now. Who knows how Izuku would handle the separation? Maybe it wouldn't bother him at all. But that doesn't mean that Hitoshi is able to shake the protectiveness that had settled over him in the wake of everything. From watching that magenta-eyed bastard talk to Izuku like that, touch him like that, fucking shit, to the monster that ripped out of him, to him collapsing from exhaustion, to the slew of vulnerabilities and secrets that he had set so delicately at Hitoshi's feet, while holding within him the fear that Hitoshi would hate him for everything he said, the fear that Hitoshi would leave. And that answers the question well enough, doesn't it? If Izuku wakes up, tonight, tomorrow, to a room without Hitoshi in it, he's going to think that Hitoshi left him, that he's afraid of him and is never coming back. Hitoshi won't do that to him. Baby. God, yeah, the guilt is really awful, though. Aizawa-san twists around in the front seat and holds out his hand. Give me the phone. Hitoshi passes it over without question, though he's filled with a brand-new admiration for his teacher. Aizawa-san had just had his son kidnapped too, but he's calm and responsible and reasonable in the face of more problems, more stresses. That's what Hitoshi wants to be like when he grows up, he decides. Someone to lean on, someone who can brave the world while others need to hide. Keita-san. Yes, I know, I understand. Aizawa-san pauses, listening, still half-turned in his seat like he's watching Hizashi-san drive. Hitoshi tracks his eyes over the side of Aizawa-san's head, the mess of his hair falling loose from his half-bun. The angle of his arm holding the phone to his ear. His voice is steady. I promise he's not hurt. He's just coping, yes. He says at length. Hitoshi can imagine his mom and her psychology degree on the other end of the phone. She understands trauma. Maybe she'll understand this too. I know this isn't going to make you feel any better, but they're both likely to pass out at the moment that they get inside. It's probably best just to let him stay and rest. A pause. Yes. Another pause, longer. Yes, of course. I promise, Keita-san. Here. He twists around again and extends the phone back to Hitoshi. Mom? He tries to keep his voice from shaking, but he fails pretty miserably at it. She takes a deep breath, angled away from the phone. Okay, Hitoshi. You can spend the night. I'm going to be there in the morning, though, okay? That's more than Hitoshi thought he was going to get. He very rarely argues with his mom, and due to her empathy quirk and his oftentimes venomous sarcasm, those arguments do sometimes devolve into screaming matches. He really hadn't wanted to have one in the back of his Ashi-san's car. He would have, though, if it meant staying with Izuku. Thank you, Mom. I love you. I love you too, baby. I'm so glad you're safe. Say hi to Izuku-kun for me, okay? They hang up after a round of goodbyes and sleep-wells, and Hitoshi taps the phone against Aizawa-san's shoulder for him to take it back. Part of Hitoshi, not a small part either, feels incredibly shitty for telling his mom, who has undoubtedly been worried about him for hours, that he doesn't want to go home with her right now. He loves his mother, and he wants to see her and fall into her arms and hug her until he collapses, but the other part of him, the selfish part, tugs at Izuku's hand until gravity makes him slump against Hitoshi's shoulder, still fast asleep. Dark curls brush Hitoshi's neck, and his even breath warms up Hitoshi's skin. He deserves to be selfish sometimes, right? He thinks he's earned a little bit of selfishness after tonight, at least. To Hitoshi's surprise, Izuku wakes up the moment the car turns off in the lot outside of Aizawa's apartment building. The tires roll to a stop, the engines die, and Izuku sits up, head turning like he's alert, though his squinting eyes give him away as still only semi-conscious. He lifts his hand, maybe to rub sleep from his eyes, but it's the one still clasped in Hitoshi's hand, and he pauses at the extra weight. Toshi? Izuku murmurs, staring down at their connected hands before slowly following the line of Hitoshi's arm up to his shoulder, his neck, his face. Izuku lights up with a tired but no less relieved smile. This is why Hitoshi couldn't bring himself to leave. I'm right here, he promises with a squeeze of his hand. We're home. The four of them shuffle up the stairs, and inside of the apartment in a loose and malformed diamond, Aizawa-san in front, Izuku leaning against Hitoshi in the middle, and Ashi-san taking the rear, one hand on Izuku's shoulder, and the other on Hitoshi's. Both Koko and Leo are at the door when it opens, screaming at them in their own ways. Against Hitoshi's shoulder, Izuku gives a tired laugh. Aizawa-san turns around once they're all inside and pulls both Hitoshi and Izuku into his chest. This is the second time he's ever been hugged by Aizawa-san, and both of these hugs happen tonight. He understands why Izuku likes it so much. Aizawa-san feels like a pillar that'll never crack or collapse, like he can hold up the world. Go to sleep, he says, gently pushing them away down the hall. Izuku groans and shakes his head. He feels more awake now, and his hand in Hitoshi's is tight. Feel gross, he says. Gonna shower first. They're both covered in dust, and unfortunately, some blood sticks out in a few places as well, so Hitoshi follows Izuku down the hall, but he stops outside of Izuku's bedroom, hand loosening even though he doesn't want Izuku out of his sight at the moment. Izuku just grips tighter and pulls. Come on, you're gross too. Hitoshi laughs, incredulous and baffled, and allows Izuku to pull him into the bathroom. They don't shower together, but they're in the same room, sharing the space even as they wrap themselves in towels and turn their backs for privacy, and trade places between standing guard near the door and scrubbing away the evening's events. And when they're both clean and smiling and finally, after too many hours of tension, relaxed, they shuffle back outside into the lamp-lit warmth of Aizawa-san's apartment. Once more guided by the hand, Hitoshi follows Izuku into the living room. Aizawa-san and his Ashi-san both stand, giving hugs to each boy in turn. Hitoshi feels safe, welcome, comforted. I told Hitoshi, Izuku says, a little muffled against Aizawa-san's chest. Aizawa-san pushes his fingers through Izuku's damp hair, face neutral. His eyes are soft, though. What did you tell him? Everything. Izuku pulls back and fiddles with the bandage on his right hand. He saw. He stayed. He deserved to know. Hitoshi stays quiet where he's tucked into his Ashi-san's side, greedily sinking into the arm around his shoulders, the steady rise and fall of the hero's chest. He hasn't interacted with his Ashi-san nearly as much as he has with Aizawa-san, but There is a prevalent comfort to the man that Hitoshi has always welcomed, and the fact that he signs with Hitoshi just adds to it, sometimes throwing private, side comments his way over dinner, even though everyone at the table can understand them. Aizawa-san slowly lowers his hand over the top of Izuku's hair and their eyes meet. Hitoshi looks away, feeling that there's a lot being said without words of any sort, and it's not his business to try and figure it out. Okay, Aizawa-san says, not angry or disappointed. We're going to have to talk in the morning about what happened tonight, but right now both of you are going to go to bed. For real this time. He sighs, and then hands cupping Izuku's face as he presses a quick kiss to his forehead. And I'm not mad at you for any of it. Understand? Izuku nods. I understand. He steps out of Aizawa-san's hold and walks right up to Hitoshi before reaching out and grabbing for him. Hitoshi goes easily, fingers interlocking, shoulders bumping, sharing warmth through their sleep shirts. Usually, when Hitoshi spends the night, he sleeps on a futon in the middle of Izuku's room when he wakes up starfished and half on the floor. Tonight, Izuku doesn't let him go for long, enough even to think about the futon. Hitoshi turns off the light. Izuku clicks on the lamp at his bedside, and then they're next to each other in Izuku's bed, pressed together from their shoulders to their still clasped hands to their knees. And when Hitoshi wakes up in the morning, he hasn't moved at all. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 17 of Swallow the Stars. Chapter 18 will be next. Hope you all are still enjoying, and as always, thank you so much for listening.